Hello, I'm Stephen Alltop, music director and conductor of the Champaign-Urbana Symphony Orchestra. And there was just a little taste of Johann Sebastian Bach, both to get you in the mood for Halloween, which is coming up, and the Champaign-Urbana Symphony Orchestra Baroque Grandeur concert coming up on Saturday, November 5th at Faith United Methodist Church. Our Baroque Grandeur program will actually open with Handel's occasional oratorio overture. Now, this is an oratorio that he composed in 1746, and the occasion was the victory of the British Army over the Jacobites from the Jacobite Rebellion. The British forces were led by the king's son, the Duke of Cumberland, and this was a major victory that Handel responded to with actually two famous pieces, his oratorio Judas Maccabeus and the occasional oratorio. The overture is actually in 4 sections. The first opens with what we call a French overture style, as do many of Handel's overtures. It's quite regal, as one might expect in referencing the victory of the king's army. Sort of sets the stage for what follows, which is a spirited allegro, the theme of which Handel actually borrowed from the Tafelmusik of his friend Georg Philipp Telemann. Very jubilant allegro. The next section is a beautiful adagio that Handel composed for this overture. These first 2 sections he actually borrowed from his oratorio Deborah that he had written 2 years prior in 1744. But the slow part of this overture for a solo oboe over string, which is very beautiful, he wrote just for this oratorio. And then the final section of the overture is a spirited march. Sounds something like this. Quite regal, and it brings this overture to a very satisfying close. Last year, after our Baroque concert at Faith United Methodist Church, one of our esteemed patrons told me that it would mean a great deal to him to hear Bach's Toccata and Fugue in D minor played live. So I'm going to do just that on our November 5th concert. When I was in 7th grade, my older brother's high school band played a transcription of the Toccata and Fugue in D minor, and it so inspired me that I spent most of my 8th grade year trying to learn how to play the piece. This is, of course, the music that you heard me play at the beginning of this video. And that effort to try to learn this piece is really how I became an organist. So I'm looking forward to playing it on this concert. That work will be followed by a concerto for 2 choirs by George Friedrich Handel. Now, while these choirs are actually made of pairs of horns and oboes, not singers, there is still some choral music in this piece, as you will see. First, I want to play how Handel opens this concerto a due cori, as it's called, in B flat major. It's another regal overture. That repeats with some embellishment and so forth. Now, the next piece is probably something you'll recognize. sure you recognize that as "And the Glory of the Lord" from Handel's Messiah. But here it is, a half step up in B flat major. And you know, the thing that amazes scholars about Handel is he seems to have had this ability to remember any music he was ever exposed to, or wrote, or heard, or played throughout his life, and could reference it at a moment's notice. And this is one reason why we seem to encounter so much déjà vu in Handel. In any event, this particular concerto grosso, with its pairs of horns, 4 oboes, is truly music of Baroque grandeur. They're accompanied by a string orchestra, and it's a treat, a bit of a rare one, to get to hear it played live. Certainly one of Handel's most famous pieces is his Watermusic, and we're going to play some Watermusic, but not by Handel, rather a terrific suite by Handel's contemporary, Georg Philipp Telemann. Telemann composed his Watermusic for the 100th anniversary of the College of the Admiralty in Hamburg, where Telemann served as the city's general music director. The port of Hamburg was vital to the city's life, and the College of the Admiralty managed most of its activities. The anniversary celebrations were held in April of 1723 and included a major feast where Telemann's Watermusic was premiered. The local newspaper reported that Telemann had provided a suite of pieces that were uncommonly well suited to the occasion. The suite begins with an overture with a customary solemn, slow beginning. Very regal, and it doesn't give any hint as to all of the energetic music that is about to follow. In fact, the allegro that follows is one of my favorites in all of Baroque overtures. It's just full of high spirits and a sense of fun. It's just a terrific piece of music. It's scored for oboes, occasional flutes, strings, and continuo. So I won't take time to play examples of all nine movements, but I will say that every movement depicts a different mythological god or goddess associated with water or the sea. For instance, after the overture, the next movement depicts the sleeping god Thetis, and you'll just get a real sense of her quietly asleep. Really lovely, that's with flutes, but you won't get lulled to sleep very quickly because the next movement is where Thetis wakes up. It's one of my favorites. Another favorite of mine would be a movement about the playing naiads. It's kind of sneaky and has a great sense of fun. And then that's followed by a dance you don't encounter too much from the Baroque, a harlequinade, and this is about the joking Triton. And I love this next part where we have pizzicato strings with a melody in the bassoon. So really enjoyable, fun music. The next movement you have to have strings to hear, and that is the storming Aeolus. And Telemann does a great job of whipping up a really sort of cyclonic wind with the strings starting out really softly and then building into this great climax. The final movement of the suite is a canari, or Spanish dance, and it's a Spanish dance depicting the happy boat people. So if you happen to love dancing canaries, this is the concert for you to come to. The next work on our program represents a musical guest from the 21st century, our dear composer friend, Stacy Garrop. Now, what's a piece from the 21st century doing on a Baroque concert, you ask? Well, A Spectacle of Light was commissioned by Music of the Baroque and premiered in September of 2021. I very frequently perform with Music of the Baroque, and it was my privilege to help give the world premiere of this piece at Millennium Park. Stacy's piece is inspired by Handel's Royal Fireworks music. And who better to tell you about it than Stacy herself?
Hi, my name is Stacy Garrop, and I am the composer of Spectacle of Light. This was my first commission for a Baroque orchestra piece, and I was so excited to have a chance to write for something like this. As a modern day composer, I don't get a lot of opportunities or offers to write for Baroque orchestra, so this was really quite a special thing for me. When I began doing the research for this piece, I went to the Music of the Baroque's webpage and saw this beautiful etching of a fireworks show. And with a little sleuthing, it turns out that that etching is from the 1749 event that honored King George II when he signed the treaty to end the War of Austrian Succession the year before. So, as was typical for leaders back in that time period, he wanted to celebrate with a big display of power, and that involved music and fireworks. And if you think about it, to command fire in the night sky was a big deal back then because they didn't have any electricity. When night fell, that was kind of it. People were in the dark, except for candles, until the next day. So the other thing that's very notable about that particular event is that Handel wrote his music for the Royal Fireworks for the same thing, and it premiered at that event. So after studying a lot of pictures, I then took my research online to study actual fireworks shows. So I went to YouTube and I watched a lot of fireworks shows there, including some really cool drones that are flying in among the fireworks up in the sky. So that helped me really think about how does music relate to fireworks, and I realized that they're both very ephemeral. They're there for a moment, you get to enjoy it, and then they just poof, they go into your memory. They're fine memories. So when I began composing my piece, I thought about the course of a fireworks show. And my piece starts off with silence and anticipation, and then one little firework goes up into the air and explodes. And then music goes back to a little bit more anticipation, and then it builds up to the first big volley of fireworks. So after that, if you think about a fireworks show, we then tend to have a lull in the middle where we get to see one beautiful firework or a flower or maybe a happy face, something that really is a contrast to the big moment. So in that moment in my piece, I chose to introduce two short quotes from Handel's Music for the Royal Fireworks. So you're going to hear those, and then that's followed by more anticipation and another big build-up to get to the big final volley of sound and light and all that excitement. But then when I get to the end of the piece, I wanted to do something a little special. So one thing I do is I draw out one of the Handel quotes a little bit longer, but I also end the piece on what in musical geeky terms we would call a dominant chord. And what this means is that the piece ends without concluding. It feels incomplete. And I engineered it that way because I wanted the whole piece to basically feel like you're anticipating what's going to come on the concert. I wanted it to build suspense for what we're going to hear for the rest of the evening.
Many thanks to Stacy for recording that video. What better segue could we have into the actual music for the Royal Fireworks by Handel? It was none other than George II of Britain who requested that Handel create special music for a fireworks display that took place in April of 1749. The occasion was the celebration of the Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle that was signed in Aachen in 1748. And what came to be known as the music for the Royal Fireworks was very much intended for outdoor performance. The ensemble was huge. 9 trumpets, 9 horns, 24 oboes, 12 bassoons. Most modern performances augment the oboe parts with strings and feature the same instruments but in slightly smaller proportions. At this particular event, London Bridge was the only access to Green Park, the location of the display, and the congestion of carriages lasted over 3 hours. By all accounts, the celebration did not quite come off as planned. The pavilion where they shot the fireworks caught on fire. Several bystanders were burned or maimed by rockets and explosions. In fact, Handel's music was the most successful and enduring part of the day. This is truly music of the highest grandeur from the Baroque. It begins with a very majestic overture. Then what follows is one of the most exciting allegros in all of Baroque music. That music reminds me of a weekend I had many years ago, and through the vagaries of concert scheduling, this particular weekend found me conducting Brahms' Ein Deutsches Requiem on a Saturday afternoon, Mahler's Third Symphony that night, and Handel's Judas Maccabeus the next day. And it's all just incredibly glorious music. It was a musical feast. But what I remember is that the most thrilling moments of that weekend were provided by Handel and his small Baroque orchestra, because Handel has this unerring sense of theater. He knows right when to use the trumpets, when to use the drums, how to use them, and how to raise our temperature and excitement to the very highest it can be in the concert experience. There are 4 movements, well 5 if you count the 2 minuets, that follow the overture. A very sprightly bourrée, a lovely movement in 12/8 time called the Peace, and then the famous movement called La Réjouissance, or the Rejoicing. And then the piece ends with a pair of minuets, one in D major and one in D minor. It will be so much fun for you, I think, to hear this piece performed live. And we do a couple special things to make it extra exciting. Thank you so much for watching this preview to Baroque Grandeur. Please know how much it means to us to have you, our audience, back in person. We love making music for you. Looking forward to seeing you at Baroque Grandeur on Saturday, November 5th at 4 p.m.